So for people that are, you know, like relatively new to LCS and are watching and they want to become fans of someone, why should someone be a fan of you? What do you think makes you stick out comparatively to other top laners?
Well, I mean, if you even look at how people ban against me, especially when they're playing blue side against me, like this game, I will always draw at least 1 or 2 bans in the 4-5. Generally, it's 2 bans, but that's because people don't like to play against me in riskier matchups. A lot of times, even in scrims, I will like solo kill them or blow open the game in those matchups, and on stage, they will try to avoid that. They will eventually come. Maybe not in this meta. This meta is a bit not so great for top lane, but it'll happen every now and then, right? And I think that when those things do happen, you'll see like me truly shine as a player. I think that flashiness will make you a fan.
Say, you know, 5 years from now or something like that, your legacy that you want to leave as a top laner, it is the identity of that strong split pushing top laner that gets these solo kills, like Fiora, Jax, all these split pushers. That's like what you want to be known for?
I would say definitely the more, like, I guess the split push type of champions. I just think that I do like to have that being as like my biggest strength, but I think top lane is really a role where you have to be that rock on your team in a sense, right? You know, there's times where I will want to play like a spicy matchup or whatever you want to call it, right? But having a tank or having a more bruiser champion that will scale into the game and maybe loosen side lane later, but just overall round out our comp and team fights, for example, is just way better for how, you know, my team wants to function that game. And I have to be able to fill those shoes well to be recognized as a top laner in my region, which is like overall my goal.
For sure. I want fans to have more reasons to be fans of players, right? I want people to have an identity. I think you have a very distinct and strong one. I want people to know, like, this is revenge. Like, what do you want to tell them? Like, are you number one?
Well, I think distinguishing top laners is always going to be weird. When you look at every team, every top laner has to fill more of a shoes for their team, depending on the meta especially, right? And what I will promise to fans is every time the meta is in top lane's favor, I will always be a top laner in this region.
Hell
right now. And I do think that right now, with how the meta is for top lane, I'm still going to consistently fill the shoes that I need to fill and not lack anything, not be a dead weight for my team. And maybe that won't make me look like I'm shining as a top laner right now, especially when we're losing games, but I promise that it will show in time.
Top 3 at least, right?
Easily.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's what I'm saying. Be a fan of this guy.
Thanks.
Be a fan of this guy. One thing that Revenge called out for himself that I've really always appreciated about him is that when we talk about a lot of top laners in the LCS, they're not necessarily willing to go in and just be like, oh, this person's picking this, like, give me the counter. Like, I'd give it to me. You know what? Like, regardless of execution, he will take that counter matchup. I thought his Camille game that we saw last, despite the fact that they lost that, was insane. He took down, like, what, 5 turrets in... I know it was under 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, it was.
It was nuts.
Another one's just his facial expression. This man is the worst poker player of all time because you can always read his reaction.
You're a fan of the man's face.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's just say a great example was in the 2v1 outplay that he had as his grave.
Yes, on the Corky.
You can read it on him, like, check out that mic check if you can. That was like an amazing moment for him, and it happens consistently.
Well, player cam only for this game.
There it is.
Don't even show the game, just show
full screen and let's see if we can figure out what's happening.
This is what I want to see during the game.
As well, we're all big fans of Revenge, and it's very cool to see him kind of be able to showcase some of the things that he was talking about so far this split in the small number of successes that Immortals has had. But that's the thing. They're still looking for more than the 2-4 record that they have. There was some other big news that came out of the Immortals camp this week. They're looking to field both AD carries. You see Turtle here on your screens now because he will be stepping onto the stage today. The jury is out when Arrow would come in. But the team did say definitively, Mark, on socials that they plan to play both of them in LCS this week.
Yeah, so Turtle today, Arrow has been playing well in Academy. It's a pretty young team, and he's like a leader on that team, and they play through him a lot. He can carry a lot of games, and I think it is kind of rewarding Arrow most likely, as well as, you know, trying to figure out what's the best for the main roster going forward.
Yeah, and I think the level of consistency that he has and the depth of his champion pool is something to watch out for, because even before he was on IMT Academy, the time that he had on Wildcard was like just something that, you know, the team could look towards. So I'm interested to see by the end of the week who they deem to be the better performing AD, and then just challenging players as we move on, because that's actually helped the main starter, is if you have somebody that's equally as ambitious, firing right behind you, that you push yourself a little harder. So I'm interested to see what happens here. It's not the first time for WildTurtle.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
There's
true.
very much not competition rolling for that squad in the AD carry position. Let's flip on over to CLG real quickly as the teams are just about ready to hop on stage. Emily, I'm going to come to you on this one. CLG picked up their first win last week, right? So that's going to feel good, but much like Immortals, still looking to add more to that win column. How do they do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think right here we're gonna see this Palafox highlight here. The Palafox and Contractz working well together in this game. I thought it showed the same glimpses of what the team could be that they showed in Lock-In, where when they have a composition that they're really comfortable on, they can execute it well enough to win, especially if they do get these early game leads. They're pretty good at snowballing even when they make mistakes.
I would just like to see a little bit more consistency. It feels like things need to go dramatically right for them, or else they go dramatically wrong. It doesn't feel like there's a middle ground for this team where they slow the pace down when things aren't going right, you know, and I think that's where they need to grow the most.
Yeah, and I mean, people will focus on the composition that they had last time around that made it easier to have a direction. I think the team is just getting, like, slowly, gradually better and better, so this should be a closer match.
It's a big matchup for both of these squads as we inch toward the end of that first round robin. It's CLG on one side, Immortals on the other. We're heading out to the arena where we've got LeTigress and Azael standing by for the call, otherwise known as Azael.
It's still better than Doug Duo,
Yeah.
so we're doing all right.
It's the premiere of it too.
I know,
Let's
first
go.
time we got in the cast together. I'm really excited for this one.
Oh, yeah.
Got some fun games here. Obviously, you know, both CLG and Immortals, I think, you know, trying to kind of climb the standings. You were talking about it's the start of Super Week. It's an opportunity for you to make some ground here. And both of them are coming off of, I would say it's fair to say their best week so far.
Yeah, and managing to grab a win against C9 for the side of Counter Logic Gaming. Immortals now having 2 overall within the standings. And with so many veterans on that team as well, people are looking for them to string together more and more as we make our way through the bans. Of course, Xerxe, I know you did all your tips on her. Maybe you'll actually get to throw them into the cast one day.
Yeah, maybe someday. I mean, the champion's pretty OP, so I definitely get why it gets banned out so much, especially on red side. But Immortals were actually pretty darn close to a 2-0 week. You know, if they didn't have what was a pretty big throw against CSM, it would have been a 2-0 week for them. So it has been kind of a bit up and to the right for Immortals. We'll see if they can kind of continue that trend. CLG, obviously, big win against C9, but I think they've been struggling in a lot of their other games. Contractz, I think, has been pretty inconsistent, though he did have a great game against C9, and it was nice to see him be able to have that to try to rebuild some of that confidence, because I had pretty big expectations for him coming into this split, and a lot of people did. He had proven himself really at the kind of second tier 2 level of competition to get back to the LCS, but hadn't really been living up to those expectations so far.
Definitely the greatest sweat appearing on his brow because of that magnifying glass, but we did see a great performance on the Hecarim, for instance, which is not just a meta pick, but when you have that jungler that is willing to play around it with the rest of the team, can be so well executed, but no longer available because of that ban from Immortals' side.
Yep, absolutely. And we have been kind of seeing a bit of that evolution in the jungle picks. You know, it had been a lot more Lee and Xin and Trundle. We're getting Udyr in there. We're getting Hecarim. We're getting Volley. These picks that are kind of coming in, whether it's in picks or bans, are becoming a lot more popular. Immortals with the early Karma. So Karma is a champion that normally is getting banned out, is considered very, very strong, not only because of that bot lane 2v2, but also the ability to flex this around. Immortals haven't really been doing any of this my top stuff, and that doesn't really feel like Revenge's style. But it is possible to play this mid, top, or in support. So there is that threat of a flex.
Which is why we continue to see it early on within these drafts, regardless of whether or not the team has run it in the past. Revenge and Jenkins have both been empowered with a lot of powerful split pushers, those that can really enable the team through that aggression, and Gwen being locked in, continuously present within the drafts across the LCS.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just a generically really strong pick, and I think, you know, as a result, when you have a champion that can lane well, can team fight well, can split push well, it's going to get played a lot in pro. Would be interested to see what the answer will be on the top side. Akali coming through does feel like a revenge pick more than PoE. He has played it in the past, but I do think this is going to be the answer to the Gwen. Can be a bit of a tricky matchup because of some of the interactions, you know, utilizing the Shroud to try to immune some of the damage coming through, or utilizing the initial throw of that Shuriken flip, because if he drops the Shroud, you have to actually be inside the Shroud to hit the E1 to then be able to reactivate and get that E2. So we'll see if that is up to Revenge, which I'm expecting it will be. I'm expecting it's going to be Karma support, and we'll probably just get a 5th pick, some sort of mage for PoE. Ahri was banned out. That has been kind of a little bit of spice for him. It's getting very popular in pro, and it's something that can be pretty aggressive, and he really does excel on.
It did not result in the victory when played it last week, but still something that you want to continually see from mid laners, especially one like PowerOfEvil, who has called out in the past that it's great to see Ahri back with a bit of the new digs, you know, that she sported since those recent changes. For CLG, since the beginning, we've talked about the importance of that bot lane, playing around Luger, playing around Poome, and it's the Jhin, Tahm, Kench that they've locked in. But the final rounds of bans coming through as well. Kennen never into the pocket of Jenkins and more.
Yeah, the Kennen ban rather is pretty interesting because that says that they're thinking this might actually be Gwen jungle, right? Because we were kind of assuming it is going to be top. It's played much more frequently top. Gwen jungle is mixed in, but not usually that popular. They are still worried about that matchup in particular though, so going to be banning that out. A bit of a mixed bag. Volley getting taken off the table. So yeah, a lot of the new kind of evolution of jungle has all been banned out. Jhin is still available, so it feels like a pretty obvious grab here for Immortals. And then you just fifth pick your mid, very likely for PoE. I like this, and I think it makes sense to kind of be banning out the volley against Xerxe. He's someone that has excelled on that champion in the past, and he's someone that always is really good at these kind of more like fringe meta picks.
In that game against EG was so proactive in executing on a lot of the dives and leading the rest of the team into the fray. You could kind of hear the comms that were coming along with it that IMT was following up on, which has been a difficulty for them throughout the season thus far. And then for CLG, you're looking at some really good Ryze play from Palafox in the past that they want to bring to the forefront now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to find out, you know, is this actually going to get flexed to the jungle? GP, Olaf, they're hovering a lot of stuff here, so I'm not going to react too heavily. It is the GP getting locked in, so it will be Gwen jungle. So AP jungle here, GP up on the top side for Jenkins. Did have, I think it was in lock-in where, he did have that one game where he was just saying chain dove, if I have that correctly in my head, which was pretty brutal. But he is known for his GP, likes to do some of these more greedy GP builds, including Muramana, Essence Reaver style builds. Orianna last pick here for Immortals. They're not really a team that's going to surprise you generally in the draft. PoE is pretty set and standard, but they have a pretty strong team fight composition. Not the best delivery systems, I would say, for the Orianna ball, but you can still utilize that with Akali or Jhin. Try to fight around that. You have a heavy pushing bot lane. Jhin can play towards that side, try to stack dragons. On CLG side, it's much more, it feels like, about the 1-3-1 and about delaying the game, slowing down the pace, trying to get farm, especially for your top side of the map. Poome and Luger are going to have to try to stay safe against what is a pretty brutal pushing bot lane in that 2v2. And if CLG can withstand the storm, well, then I think it's going to be really difficult for Immortals to match the Ryze and the GP insides. Even Contractz can potentially split push if he gets enough farm on the Gwen. So a lot of late game options for them, and some pressure on Immortals to try to push the pace here in the earlier stages of the game to stack those dragons and maybe force Immortals to kind of group.
And when looking over on the CLG side and finally starting to get things online, it feels like when Contractz can make those early plays down on the bot side, it's worked out so well. Can you do it against the lane that Immortals has brought to the table?
Yeah, that's going to be the big question here. Ever since the TP changes, a lot of these enchanter and pushing bot lanes have been a lot stronger. It's more difficult to punish, but if Contractz can get a wraparound on them, Gwen is not the strongest ganking jungler, of course, but if they are overextended, there is the possibility of a chase down. Poome can look for some sort of an engage, and if you can force those flashes, things can get a lot more difficult, especially post 6 if Palafox is going to move down and try to make it some sort of a 4-man play. That can be potentially a lot more effective. As it looks like Immortals just want to kind of play for brush control here, sweep that out, make sure there's no side lane control. This is actually really important when you are playing these enchanter matchups, because sometimes you'll have junglers actually start trinket ward, walk down towards bot, you ward the brush, you can swap the sweeper, and then that can kind of give you the ability on CLG's side to react to Karma's poke, right? So they go down there, they sweep out the brush, and now Immortals know we're gonna have the pushing lane and we're gonna have side brush control. So Tahm, Kench, and Jhin are gonna have to actually drop their ward to sacrifice that, which can be reacted to, and that just gives them a lot of power in that 2v2.
gathering that early intel to hopefully turn it into some proactivity later on the side of Immortals. As we said before, both these teams in CLG and Immortals having a lot to prove, wanting to set the tone on day one of the Super Week to bring themselves elevated more in the standings. Now, with Gwen coming into the jungle, because I feel like when we first saw that happen, it was very much dependent upon the picks around, a lot of sustain to really lean into that. What do you think we're looking for from Contractz in the early stages?
I mean, in the early stages, generally as Gwen, you're just going to want to farm it out. You don't really want to interact with Xerxe. You're looking more for mid-game power, for late-game power. This champion can teamfight very well post-6 when you do have that Shroud available. But as far as early gank, unless someone is really overextended, you can't really capitalize on that. If people do overextend, you can ghost and chase down, but really it's about warding, it's about tracking the Jhin, and just getting your farm, getting your levels to kind of set yourself up for success later on.
So we'll definitely be keeping track of how Contractz manages to pull that power in later after spending his time across the jungle, whereas Xerxe now has moved over towards that top side to continue off with the clear. And we're getting a little bit of a pause here, but the bot lane, as expected, we already mentioned the fact that there will be that aggressive play from the Caitlyn alongside the Karma going for that initial poke.
Yep, exactly. They want to push, they want to poke, they want to try to harass these guys as much as they can under tower. If you can lock Luger and Poome under tower, it can become very difficult for Tahm Kench to even pick up those relic stacks without eating a lot of poke. You set up the Caitlyn traps, that's where you're really kind of in your element, farming those early tower plates, trying to create a lead there that you can then move around the map. As soon as we have any info on what's going on here, we will let you know, but hopefully it's going to be a quick pause and we can kind of move forward. But it will be interesting to me to see how quickly Immortals goes towards that first dragon. Like if they're actually going to try to do, you know, a 6-7 minute dragon really early on, grab that so they can start to stack towards Soul. Or, you know, if they are going to really more focus on getting things like early heralds and trying to extend their gold lead. Because I do think if you go that route and you haven't been stacking dragons and you're not massively ahead, it can become very, very difficult to actually force CLG to kind of come to you and get that 5v5 because they don't really have any hard engage. And if CLG want to play 1-3-1, there's not a lot of great tools to actually pick them off in those side lanes. So that's going to be what they kind of have to watch out for.
And especially when trying to go for those early objectives, yeah, you do have a Ryze on the opposite side. So as soon as Palafox gets a little bit more unleashed from the lane, can be so much of a threat to really suddenly tip the numbers in their favor.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that earlier. Blaze Olive, you know, had a really, really good game on the Ryze. I will say this is, you know, a tougher game to kind of be that like ultra tank Ryze because there are two AP threats on the other team. Orianna is, you know, high magic damage. Akali as well can threaten you, you know, whereas in that earlier game, he was just dealing with, you know, the Everfrost rapid fire TF, which isn't a tremendous amount of consistent magic damage. So you stack the armor up, you become very, very tanky in that way. You can still go things like, you know, Force of Nature and the kind of tanky AP resistance type route, but it's not nearly as effective as some of the things like the Frozen Heart, you know, which gives you the mana that's also increasing your damage.
It's always helpful when you have a champion like that in general, where you can be a bit more adaptive with the build for the rest of the team, and CLG needing to be very cognizant of that. I know Jenkins on the GP, for instance, hoping to have a bit of a different turn this time around, has been able to perform on the pick in the past, as many top laners have, but also looking at the impact of that ultimate. How can you really disrupt a lot of the team fighting when the opposition on Immortals do tend to go for it?
Yeah. I mean, it can definitely be difficult to fight cross map. You know, with GP ult available, it's kind of like a, you know, instead of a 4-on-4, it's almost like a 4.5-on-4 or whatever you want to call it. Can be pretty impactful. So it is going to help them to kite back as well. And it can kind of be your pseudo engage because both teams are pretty light on hard engage options, right? You know, it's kind of like a flash room prison or something, or Poome looking for, you know, some sort of an unburrow type play to knock someone up. But the GP ulti can really empower that. You know, even if they're just a bit overextended, you drop the GP ulti for the slow. Gwen pops Ghost is going in, Poome is going forward. You know, Jhin ult, all these things are less hard CC and more just slows and kind of roots and little things that can kind of allow you to chase them down.
So we did get word on the pause. It is lag reported by the players, so currently investigating that, and we'll update you with any additional information as it becomes available. Clearly, nothing much has happened in the game thus far. As
We're
we
like
did
one wave
recently.
in, so.
Yeah, definitely the case. I do want to get your general thoughts over on Immortals and maybe some of the changes they've made over the past weeks, because it feels like one of the biggest criticisms early on, besides the communication and being a bit more disoriented in later stages, was playing so much towards revenge in the top side when you have someone like PoE that you can enable there in the mid lane. Do you feel that they have been doing a better job of enabling some of the other lanes, or are still indexing so heavily into the strategy as we're seeing Akali once again?
I mean, I think they're still indexing pretty heavily on that. You know, when I actually look at the champion pool that Immortals have been using for top, it's all aggressive picks, right? This is the second Akali. He has 3 Graves games, Jason, Camille. It's all aggression. It's all about, you know, kind of playing through sides. We saw the interview that Hai actually had with Revenge, you know, talking about how, you know, he sees himself as this flashy player who wants to go for high volatility matchups and look for kills. And when you're going to play that way, you do actually just need the support of your team, because it's extremely risky to actually be going for aggressive trades and be looking for these plays if your jungler is not behind you, or at the very least has not actually tracked the enemy jungler, so you know it's an isolated 1v1. So I do think if you want to support Revenge in playing that style, you kind of have to go for it. To me, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you mentioned communication, because I think that's where we've seen the biggest improvements. When you look back to their lock-in games, when you look back to their week 1 games, they just seemed completely disjointed. You know, someone's engaging while the other person is flashing out. Someone is looking to actually go side lane while half their team is trying to go towards Dragon or whatever. It just felt like they were totally disjointed as a team. So I think they've really improved and kind of come together in that way. And we're going to have to see if that's going to be enough to allow them to keep picking up wins and potentially start challenging some of these teams that are a little bit higher up in the standings.
I do remember appreciating some of the additional details and transparency from the Immortals side through social posts after that initial showing, because obviously a lot of people were asking questions, but even noting that the comms sounded very different than they had prior in any of the practices. So when you're looking at the uptick in performance from them, you have to imagine that that is partly where that's coming from, right? Shoring up those communication issues when you have so many veterans that are looking at this season and thinking, we have the strength to win now. We've done it in the past and we want to do so again.
Absolutely. And when you have a team full of veterans, you're looking for that early success. You're looking for that team to gel, really take advantage of that experience. But while we are waiting for this pause to be resolved, we're going to toss over to the guys at the desk for their info.
Comments?
LeTigress.
Thank you so much.
Azaelgress? Is that what you're
going with?
That one's good too.
Azaelgress?
Yeah.
I like mine
Azaelgress?
better. And mine was mine was still pretty low effort, and I feel like I was
Well,
at
I
least
think
still the front runner there.
Azael made it very clear they didn't like the Doug Duo name. We need to find something that's equally as bad, if not worse.
Equally as bad, if
Wow.
not worse.
Yes.
I like
Is it
Tigress
possible?
and Azael too much to
Yeah.
do that to them. Immortals, CLG, obviously a small technical pause here. Some lag has been reported by the players, and so league officials are investigating. We'll keep you apprised of any updates as they come into us. We don't have any gameplay to go
I think
through.
we should just rewatch the level 1 in super slow motion and look for any potential
Yeah.
misclicks.
Bam.
There we go.
And don't be surprised if production delivers.
Yeah.
I want to see exact board placements,
But let's go. Let's
how
maybe-
fast they bought their items.
Okay.
Oh my.
They followed
I've
us
lost
through
control,
the bug.
everybody.
They might actually do it.
I have very
for
much
you.
lost control. Let's talk about compositions here. Do we have any initial thoughts? I mean, we were, Emily, during Champion Select itself, kind of commenting on the Kennen ban and therefore the Gwen flex by CLG with the GP coming in.
Yeah, I mean, it also showed that IMT kind of called the fact that it wasn't going to be Gwen top, it was going to be Gwen jungle, which I think is a good call. And then obviously, you know, GP is one of Jenkins's picks. I know that they already cast highlighted on how their opponents attacked them previously when that happened by just like diving the top side over and over, which could be a route that IMT could go if they wanted to, because once again, we have Revenge just being on Akali.
Yeah, and I mean, the Akali pickup is going to be the most interesting thing for me, just because, like, generally speaking, in terms of how to deal with Tahm Kench, Akali has been the answer because, yeah, you can save your AD carry for a little bit, but you're still in Shroud, like, right on top.
I can shroud that
Yes.
duration, essentially.
You can wait the duration out during a team fight. The only question is how you deal with that if GP ulti's there. Because GP ulti is going to make it so you're really going to be cut off from your team. So we've seen this actually already from IMT in a previous match where, like, okay, you know, Akali's in there, Revenge is doing his thing, but he's isolated and you lose the fight because they bought enough time.
So just on that point, though, I mean, the one thing I would say is if I'm on Immortals side, I'm a little scared of how much damage is on C, right? Okay, as Akali, I threaten one of your carries. Let's call it the Jhin, just for argument's sake. Tahm, Kench, eat. You still got a Ryze rapid firing on you, a Gwen running through your team, and a GP layering barrels into the team fight as well. So
They got options.
at a certain point, obviously, scaling champions, at a certain point, I would be pretty terrified to be walking into CLG's damage, per se.
Yeah, I think that depends a lot about who gets ahead in the game and how they're going to control it, because at the same time, I feel like Immortals Team Comp actually drafted a lot of tools against CLG, and I was surprised to see the GP taken into Karma, because a lot of the time,
I'm going to rip into this conversation here because, as you can see, teams have already loaded back.
Yeah, shut up, Mark.
And nobody wants to hear Mark talk. They want to
Not
hear
even me.
LeTigress and Azael.
No cool name that time, huh, Dash? Just LeTigress and Azael back at ya for CLG versus Immortals.
We'll work on it. We'll workshop this. We'll get it sorted out. Get something better in Doug Duo for sure. But this is going to be an exciting one, and you can see already, some aggressive plays down on that bottom side. They're trying to push. They're trying to play in their face, and they've actually caught this in.
Ooh, the route directly onto Xerxe. Flash away from Palafox. First blood afforded over to IMT, but it continues to go down. Contractz, though, he ends up returning, and PowerOfEvil is in dangerous territory. One more click will get the passive up and ready. Snip, snip away, my friend. Contractz takes the double kill.
Oh, Contractz, the double kill. He gets a red buff. That is huge for the Gwen here. They actually caught out Xerxe, so they wanted to go aggressive, but it did get turned around on them pretty quick. We got to see the power of that Zhao. But when you are ignoring Contractz, he has Conqueror fully stacked. He has the Ghost up. In that extended fight, he got so much value. So Palafox was going over actually for a ward here, but Contractz was right behind him. Palafox does get burst down pretty quick. It was the flash follow, but the Ghost is providing a lot of value, chases him down, catches him up, full stack there on the stip, gets that through, and then at this point, you just don't have enough damage to actually finish him off as PowerOfEvil. That is kind of the power of the sustain in his kit. Healing for a couple hundred throughout that fight. Early double kill for Gwen is really concerning for Immortals, because you're kind of slingshotting past this weak early stage with this big injection of gold.
Yeah, I thought Contractz was going to spend all that time just roaming through the jungle, get a little bit of farming under his belt, and that was Xerxe setting up for that potentially. But a great return from CLG to bring themselves into this advantage and the rotation from that jungler and mid position. We have seen them synergized in the past and can be such a great foothold to catapult them into future success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Palafox had the push, so he wanted to actually make a move for a ward, and it was just smart play from Contractz. He is covering this little warding mission there from Palafox, and normally if it's just the Ryze, he face checks that, he's just going to die for free as Orianna moves over. But because Contractz was there to actually protect, even though Gwen is generally a weaker early game champion, it just didn't really matter. And now Poome going to take a lot of damage here.
Ooh, gets rooted, throws up the gray health and flashes out of the direction. But Luger's here, throws down some autos. Contractz is in the vicinity, sweeping out as well to make sure that he's not sought out if he does need to intervene here. We know that Immortals have warded up the entirety of the river, so they'll be seeing it. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Contractz moved forward, but the sweeper range is not as big as the ward sight range. So he stepped out of the brush with the sweeper on, but didn't actually catch that ward, so they don't get that info. Immortals knows he's backed off now, so they can really push just full-on aggression here. They're going to try to force a flash out of Luger, perhaps.
Oh, the heal was already used prior as well, so now Summoner is completely down for Luger on the CLG side.
Yeah, that is huge. They forced out all those sums. Unfortunately, it was Turtle's flash in trade. It wasn't Destiny flashing in to actually force that out, so Turtle is now at risk as well. Destiny will still have his flash, but Caitlyn going to have to be a little bit careful when they don't know where that Gwen is at. But we're seeing this aggression pay off. It's often about actually poking the TK more than it is about this marksman. And now Contractz and Palafox trying to move towards the top side. Xin is down on bot. Does Revenge even have his Shroud available? Oh, he just got 6, so that is really big. Might be difficult to pull off the dive now.
Seems like he saw this coming, backing off towards the tower, dashes through nicely so he can get out of the way. This does mean that plates are going to go down. Jenkins continuing to target the tower itself, but Revenge playing very carefully with the numbers.
Yep, getting 6 there, using that to actually stay safe was really well played. As you said, unfortunately, he does have to give up a plate. He does have to miss out on this farm. At least they are getting Dragon on bot side, but it was really the base timings there that kind of afforded CLG the time to get this done. PoE had no teleport because he had actually died, and he was back in base. So Palafox just goes towards top side, gets that nice advantage for them. They've now created a pretty big lead there for Jenkins, and Palafox still had his TP, so able to get back towards mid, catch this wave that's pushing in. You can see the CS advantages are being extended in both of these solo lanes here, and those are the guys that are going to be playing through side. Those are the guys who can try to really make a lot potentially out of this gold lead. At the very least, though, Immortals did get the early dragon, so they are going to be stacking towards Soul and going to potentially have a good one here. You know, could get something like an Ocean Soul, maybe. That's probably what they're really going to be hoping for, is it's Ocean Infernal or Cloud.
Working towards that bot side advantage, trading off of that pressure that CLG brought towards top. No teleports available now for anyone. PowerOfEvil will be the first to come up because of how he used that early after that initial death. So still limited movement on both sides.
Absolutely, and that's one of those cases where GP ult can become really effective, right? No one else can actually match, but if you have a 3v3 or a 2v2 and you get a high value GP ult, that can be really nice. Just play for that cross map ulti. And Jenkins from ahead, this champion can be so frustrating to actually deal with. You know, he gets that early sheen. Revenge did not have a good early buy, and you're just getting Q grass procced over and over. PoE trying to potentially threaten a dive here with Xerxe. They're going to go 4 bot, and they are going to look for this. Poome is not 6 critically.
He won't be able to chomp up his ADC if needed. The cannon barrage comes through from the GP as well. A nice slice. WildTurtle picking it up onto the catfish. Hook, line, and sinker. Bottom lane eliminated from CLG.
That is so big, and that's even the GP ulti. They don't even get a kill back in that dive. Revenge is being put completely out of the game, so there is a pretty big cost fest on the top side. This is 3 solo gold plates, I believe, that have all gone over there to Jenkins. As you can see, Jenkins and Contractz are both super rich at this point. You know, Jenkins almost ahead of Contractz at this point without having a single kill. He is going to be printing gold up there. You know, a good 1,300, going to be 1,400 once he gets this plate over Revenge already.
Quite the CS advantage. CLG continuing to move as
Flash.
a unit as the bot lanes made their way towards mid. Xerxe, none the wiser, throws out the Crescent Guard for a little bit of sustainability. It ain't enough though. Palafox grabs it.
Almost able to burst down Luger. That got pretty close. Luger did have the heal, so he was comfortable enough to actually sit on that. Tries to turn for the kill, but a good catch on Xerxe, who's just being a little bit too aggressive there. Contractz are the early 2 kills, just go straight Nashers. So his ability to actually solo down these objectives becomes super, super scary. When you do have an AP jungler with high sustained damage, like a Diana or a Gwen, you know, early Barons, early Heralds, things like that become such a breeze. You can even, you know, 2-man, 3-man Baron shortly after 20 minutes because there is a lot less resistances to AP damage from Baron than there are to physical, which kind of gives you that flexibility to threaten these early plays, and it's something that Immortals are going to have to watch out for, albeit, you know, not for 10+ minutes.
I love that you mentioned the Diana as well, because when thinking about Contractz, never mind, because Contractz is in the middle of the action right now, ends up Blasconing right into the center of Immortals. Palafox can't do anything about it, so Immortals grab that victory kill.
Yeah, that's a pretty big oopsie there. Gives over the shutdown. Didn't have any vision towards the top side and just Blascones over. Wants to try to go pick up that scuttle, potentially even threaten the Herald, but does end up getting shut down. Loses a lot of tempo, and they're going to look for another play.
Oh, Xerxe shockwave to bring Palafox right into the vicinity. Xerxe tries to go for the connect, but Palafox flashing away.
Nice flash to actually get back to safety, but Immortals, you know, really getting a lot off of that. They force out the flash. PoE's kind of in his comfort zone. He's picked up a couple kills after getting very far behind in those early plays. Luger getting threatened again. Gonna try to use this ult to push them back.
Curtain opened, Abyssal dive for Poome, trying to get the knock up. The damage is hitting, but is it strong enough? Destiny locked down temporarily. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, Palafox falling into some trouble, which also means it'll be difficult for him to assist when any of this action comes down in the bot lane.
Yeah, absolutely. Jenkins just relentlessly pushing, though. He is so far ahead, and he grabs the early Hexdrinker here. Really, the only way you could actually fall behind now is if Revenge could pull off some sort of a solo kill. But with you having a Hexdrinker and him spending all his gold on early tabbies, there's just no kill threat from Revenge. So Revenge just kind of has to take it. It's getting shoved in, getting that tower actually farmed up. If Immortals can keep the push here on bot side too, you can take the second dragon on spawn, and things are looking good for them on their bottom 4, but you know, the question is, are you going to be able to get Revenge to a point where he is relevant in this game? Because he has been so far put out of it.
And WildTurtle and Destiny denying this bottom lane as much as possible, also buying the time for Xerxe to come into the territory. They have a couple controls down as well, so blockading that vision that CLG tried to establish before. They seem to be very aware, though, that they're in dangerous territory. Luger already down to 400 HP, gets chomped on up with the Devour. Ace in the hole comes through, tanked up. Luger nice and shielded at this point in time. So the rest of IMT, they back away from this, but they do get the tower because of that pressure.
Yep, gonna be able to get the tower. The GP ulti does cover on bot side. I'm surprised they haven't started up the dragon yet, though, because they are spending a lot of time down here on this bottom side. Now PowerOfEvil maybe gonna get wrapped on, but could get the solo.
Oh, another shockwave. Contractz coming through. Can he punish him for the misdeed of the solo? Needlework coming through. Another snip from him. He does get the return. Xerxe all the while, though, does finally start up this dragon to get it stacked once more and has the bot lane coming to support him.
Yep, they knock down that tower. They will grab a dragon here, and it's just gonna be about who can get more from their super fed side of the map. GP on a very early Triforce here, has the Hexdrinker plus the Triforce already. Revenge has absolutely nothing right now. And then you look down towards WildTurtle, he has gotten this massive injection of gold. PowerOfEvil is looking really, really good here as well. Those guys have the early mythic. Xerxe has his early mythic, so they are at a really strong part of the game. We'll see what they can get done with this Caitlyn now, because they want to move Caitlyn around the map. They want to try to continue to farm these plates, pressure towers, and they're going to send Revenge just down towards bot lane to try to cover that pushing wave and just get as much golden XP as he can.
Seeing some of the comments from Reddit, the thing I was going to say before about Contractz is when he came back into the LCS on EG stepping in and he had such explosive play on picks like the Diana, being able to execute well. He has a history with AP junglers, Nidalee being one of his favorites in times past. So I think CLG fans are kind of holding on to, hoping, all right, let's see what you can do on this Gwen, especially when you have that start afforded, especially when you have Poome here to go for the answer onto Revenge, who tries to ult away, even use the Ignite, but it's not enough. One down in favor of CLG.
Oh man, that's brutal. He goes towards bot side, trying to just pick up a bit of safe farm here, ends up going down anyway. And they have the Herald to crash here, so Palafox is going to be able to continue pushing this in. Plates are about to fall, so that bot lane tower might just straight up die as actually plates fall. It's going to lose all those resistances, and it's going to be able to get knocked down here pretty quick. Up on that top side, Caitlyn is still pushing, and Jenkins playing aggressively.
Caught into the sights by Xerxe, throws out the wind becomes lightning, flash away, and the additional sustain of the potion. So Jenkins does survive, but it's a continued onslaught from IMT pressuring this top side.
Yep, just continually playing through that Caitlyn, move the Caitlyn around the map, continue to try to get as many towers as possible. Because even with this Caitlyn being so strong, Jenkins and Contractz are just so far ahead that they are still down nearly 2,000 gold here. And CLG, is at this point where coming up on this third dragon, they may feel confident to straight up fight for it.
Gold lead for CLG. Is it enough when Luger gets knocked up and isolated under this tier 1 in mid? Contractz is in the area, so is Poome. So IMT knowing that, not having the vision, they'll go ahead and back off. They take that victory of the kill. Both
teams just being so aggressive, playing through their points of strength. A lot of kills here. 15 minutes in, we have 11 kills. A pretty crazy action-packed game so far.
I love it when you have two teams that, when mentioning the fact that they need to prove themselves and bring things up, you want to see them proactive. You don't want to see them sitting back and waiting to respond to mistakes of the other side. Make the plays yourself and see what you can do with it in the game.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. You need to be able to play with confidence. You need to be able to capitalize on the opportunities that are afforded to you, and both teams have been doing a pretty good job of that. Revenge, probably just going to try to hold a freeze, over on that bottom side if he can get one, just to be able to try to, get that going for himself. But the wave is pushing away from him for now, and Jenkins is heading down there, so he will, again, unfortunately for him, be matched up against this JP that is just so far ahead. But I'm really looking towards this next dragon. It is Cloud, which Immortals are probably not super happy about, but
Preemptive flash from Destiny here. The cannon barrage route directly onto Xerxe. He has to get out of this as well. Needlework thrown by Contractz, and it's additional zoning because the curtain has been called. Xerxe now on the outskirts of it, but the ultimate still active for Contractz. He gets a pretty good blast through him.
Shockwave's there,
Gonna go ahead and get caught off right here. Xerxe on the attack. WildTurtle picks one up onto Poome here, but it's Contractz and Poome down now for CLG. They lose another. Two more standing. Luger, you are in a barrel right now. Shots taken by Immortals. 4 down. for CLG.
Oh my God, CLG trying to go aggressive with the Realm Warp, but they lost track of the Orianna. Orianna shows up and they got punished so hard off of that. A lot of members going down there. They lose 4. They only kill off the Jhin. That is rough for CLG, who now, are almost back to dead even here. They had built up about a 2K gold lead, through these solo lanes, through their top side. Really, the jungle and top laner were massively ahead, but off of that, a lot of that does get clawed back. And Turtle, who was already ahead, is going to be well on his way to his second item. He's got another 1,200 gold in pocket, and already on, his item plus pieces.
A lot of CLG's firepower and utility used in the earlier portion of that skirmish. You drop down the GP ult, everyone's running through it, and then it feels like they just wanted to follow up right there, be able to secure the damage that they lied there in the very beginning. But the team fighting for Immortals. You look at ultimates like Shockwave. You look at just the lockdown and the way that they can follow up on something like that and being able to revert the tide.
Yeah, it just felt like an overchase. Almost the frustration you can see when Jhin is that low for that long and they're just barely out of range. Like, we gotta kill this. There's no way Xerxe gets to walk away here. And he didn't. They were right, but they didn't get to walk away either, which was kind of the bigger issue there. And that's just about tracking timers, tracking where the enemy players could be. They lost track, I think, of PoE. If he hadn't shown up, if he hadn't actually made that move, I think the Realm Warp is probably fine. Turtle has to continue running. Destiny had already blown his sum. Xerxe couldn't actually really turn and fight. He was too low. But with PowerOfEvil showing up, they just got absolutely lit up. Contractz goes in. Poome tried to use the instant devour to actually protect him from the shockwave, and I think he did have the timing right to do so. But Poome died almost instantaneously. Contractz gets burst down right after, so does end up being a pretty rough play for them. We'll find out if it's just more kind of issues with lag in game or what it is. But for now, I do think Immortals are looking pretty darn good off that play. Being able to move in towards this next dragon, if they can grab that for themselves and move to Soul Point, you're gonna be feeling pretty good.
Especially because while the gold lead was in favor of CLG, it's not like Immortals weren't working up their own advantages. They were stacking those dragons. They were just now moving their power to opposite portions of the map so they can get WildTurtle closer and closer to that second item. And here they are getting a nice injection of gold and spirits for them as well when you're able to overtake CLG and punish them for that misstep.
Yeah, totally. But on the other side, CLG obviously still can play very effectively through side lanes. We'll see if that's going to be the call, or if they will show up and really try to fight at this next dragon. I think that's what they had been kind of building towards, trying to trade gold for dragons. And, they're at a point where they had a couple thousand gold leads. So you think, okay, well, they'll probably will fight dragon number 3. Empty chair there. So going to be waiting a little bit longer, I guess, for someone to return. But CLG can still play through sides, but if you give up third dragon uncontested, it gets really, really tough because then it's one smite steal, it's one pick away from giving up soul, which really becomes very, very difficult to actually play against. I think especially just the flat move speed, when you're playing split push strategies and you're playing against this team that then has 10% bonus move speed, it becomes a lot harder to actually be safe in those side lanes without getting chased down.
So this pause is a bit different from the last one. They are investigating a Ryze interaction off of that last instance. So
I bet I can guess what it is. I'm pretty sure, and maybe we can actually get some replays if we're going to be waiting a while to actually see what happened. But there's some logic with how Ryze ulti works that can feel pretty weird, where basically the game tries to intuit, are you trying to walk into the portal or not? It's not always if you are actually in the portal. It's like, if basically the game is deciding, I think he's trying to get in there. And they made this change to try to make it so that you have less of these like missed realm warps. But sometimes it can kind of work against expectation and it can kind of be a little bit weird. So we'll see, if anyone was trying to walk out of it.
Oh, let's see.
They were all in it. So what was the interaction that he's kind of
Unless it's something else, then.
So it wasn't what I was talking about, because they all three clearly intended to get inside.
Very much walking towards the center.
Yeah. And sometimes it is one of those situations where you're like not quite in it, and you think it's fine to continue moving that way, but the game's like, oh, you're walking towards the realm warp. Along you come. But it wasn't the interaction I was thinking of. I'm not sure exactly what they were kind of complaining about or frustrated with, what happened there in their eyes. But to me, that looked like all three of them wanted to be in the realm warp. So beyond that, I'm kind of unsure what it was that they were feeling didn't really work out. Maybe it was like they didn't get vision where they were going to arrive, or something weird happening there. But looked like they all intended to go in the realm warp and just kind of got roasted when they came out.
Yeah, I thought your guess was a good one. I feel like that would be the most likely one there, but we'll find out eventually, maybe a bit more about what's going on here. You can see everybody. Yeah.
Interesting. So okay, so I got a little bit of info. So Palafox said he pressed base during the realm warp, and his understanding of the interaction is that if he presses recall when the realm warp is going, that he shouldn't go with the realm warp. So he apparently did not want to follow the realm warp. He wanted to send his teammates forward and then follow in from range on the chase. I cannot say I know anything about that particular interaction. That sounds like a weird one if it's intended, but I know there have been some weird interactions around recall in the past where you could cancel animations and things even with recall. So there's definitely been some funky stuff in the past. So we're going to see it from his pro view. Thanks again, Production Smurfing it. Let's see. Does he actually press his recall button? So he walks back in. Does he start his recall? Yeah, he does start recall. So clearly he believed that was what the interaction was. And that does change things. You know, if you don't actually get pulled through, at the very least, he wouldn't have died. I mean, I think it still goes bad for them because Jhin doesn't die either. So really, I'm not sure how much it actually changes. Like if he goes through, Caitlyn was between him and the play. I don't think he actually can do any sort of a flank play and bail his teammates out. I think all that would really change is he wouldn't die and Jhin wouldn't die. So I'm not sure how the interaction is actually intended to go. Like that's one of those things that's so niche that you can't just go on LoLWiki and read about it in the spell details, right? Like there are some weird interactions that I don't even know if they're intended or not, but are just in the game, right? And this is something that happens when there's, 160 odd champions now with a million different interactions. But clearly he's pressing recall. He does go through. That happened. Whether or not it was supposed to happen, I couldn't really tell you.
Yeah, it looks like the bar fills up and everything. That's Palafox. You were sitting in practice tool trying to figure out all of the inner workings of Ryze. It does take a lot to be able to discover those intricacies. And if it's something that you've practiced in the past and then you try and execute it and that's what you're hoping for, sure. But like you mentioned, it was the Ryze damage that did eventually lead to the death of Xerxe. So it's not like it would have been this other very clearly specific play.
Yeah, I mean, it would be pretty big though for them if they can roll that back. If this is a bug and it gets rolled back, well, then you just don't do the realm warp in the first place because you kind of know you're going to get smoked. So it is a pretty big inflection point in the game. And we'll see what they are able to discover. Last time when we had the bug, earlier, I guess it was last week when I was talking about it, I was like more confident in kind of what was supposed to happen, with the vision between Vulcan and I guess it was PoE, I think, as well in that one. But this time around, I just don't know this specific interaction. That sounds like something that he maybe figured out or has heard about and is kind of trying to use. Because, there are some interesting interactions with recall and certain spells can be cast during recalling and things like that.
Vulcan tweeting, speaking of, one does not simply pause against Immortals and win. I was just thinking, what did Immortals do to attract all of these pauses? Because that coming specifically from Vulcan, who was the subject of the last pause.
And then they lost against them.
Yep, they lost. So Immortals, and it was because of, well, not necessarily because it's also a domino effect, right? But things did go differently.
Yep.
Where Revenge previously in the 1v2 prior to that pause had died. This second time he was able to take JoJo down with him, which then had that cascading effect, changing the rest of the game for Immortals to eventually win.
Absolutely. It's interesting to see kind of those knock-on effects, right? Because sometimes I think players just kind of overthink it. And in that situation, it was interesting because the first time they played it through, JoJo played it pretty slowly and played it pretty carefully and didn't really get in range of the Graves and just like, it took them a lot longer to kill him, but they did kill him and no one died. And then you could kind of tell it after this long pause, they're like, all right, we're going to kill him really quick and then we're going to get over to the Baron and we're going to punish them there. But by playing it more aggressively, he exposed himself, to the outplay, and Revenge was able to find that and get that counter kill, which did kind of change the landscape of the game. It prevented EG from being able to go Baron.
The pop-off was pretty epic as well.
Yeah, he was absolutely going nuts.
I watched it back because I was wondering, like, how much can you hear? Does it bleed in at all into the cast?
I can hear it up here.
We could hear. I usually watch from right below our feet. And that has about a wall between as well, the actual stage and the resting position. And the voices were crystal clear coming through.
Immortals is definitely one of the loudest teams on stage, which is kind of one of the fun things about them, how excited they get. Destiny is absolutely one for the pop-offs. So is Revenge. Those two guys in particular, really, really vocal on stage. And It does make it really fun to actually listen to, which just kind of makes me sad then that, again, that we haven't been able to get fans back. I'm hoping for that so much, that we can have the fans back in the studio. Definitely miss that. I know the pros miss that too, and hopefully sometime this year, we'll be able to have some sort of event with fans back.
I don't even know what it's like. It was a few weeks before we went locked down. I don't remember.
Oh no!
It didn't put a lasting enough memory in my brain. I'll need some fans to eventually remind me of that.
Okay. So we got the info from QC. So the interaction is supposed to work that way, but you have to start the recall earlier for it to actually, I guess, go through. And so as a result, I believe we are continuing forward in the game as is. Nothing will be changed. We're going to be getting ready checks here and hopefully moving on forward. So it is an interaction, but I guess there is a very specific timing with it. They have, tested it out, checked it out, and found that things worked as intended. And we're going to be moving forward.
Well, hey, as Jat would say and has said on the desk before, you might as well ask for it. You never know when you're going to be granted a chrono break and be able to turn things around from there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I never hate on the players for it. If something does not work how you expect it to work, or you feel that there was a bug, you should always pause, because if you're not sure and you wait, you're not going to get the opportunity to pause later. You've got to do it in that moment. Here's that play one more time. So starts the realm warp. And I guess just started the recall too late then, is my understanding of how this is supposed to work. Oh, so the recall didn't actually start channeling. That was the like beginning of the recall cast, because the bar for the actual recall hadn't actually shown up. That was the bar filling up to begin the recall, is now what I'm understanding from the explanation that I heard and what I just watched there. So if that is true, if my understanding of this is true, he was like 0.1, 0.2 seconds late on it. So it was very, very close. And as a result, ends up going down. But we are back in game. Everything moving forward. 4 for 1 for Immortals. And that is a big play for them, given that they can be potentially picking up their 3rd dragon here pretty soon. And have now really closed that gold lead, because they were about 2K down behind that play.
Definitely changes things a bit for them, but CLG not completely out of it just yet. We still have about 35 seconds until this next Drake spawns, which is IMT's opportunity to get onto Soul Point, unless CLG want to disrupt this. And as called out before, that's something that they can look to do now that they've been unlocked from the lanes.
Yeah, absolutely. They can contest it. It looks like they are trying to set up here, trying to establish vision to do just that. And it is Cloud Soul, which is kind of the least desirable. I think that Immortals would have been hoping to grab an Ocean Soul or an Infernal Soul here instead. So there's the possibility that CLG, if they don't have the right angle, just decide to give it up. But for now, they're pushing through mid. They're trying to get the waves going in their direction, moving into river, trying to establish vision control here as much as they can. But Revenge is on the flank, and I'm not sure if he's been spotted. Kind of looks like Palafox is hunting for the flanking player, because they do not have eyes on Revenge. We'll see if they can find him. Well, we check.
Last cone's still up for him too, to try and jump into any of this if needed. The Drake already whittled down to about 40%. CLG keeping the target on it. Cannon barrage. Xerxe rooted in the center, goes for the objective at hand, and it's secured over by CLG's side. Palafox flashing into the pit, and there's a blast cone for Revenge to get into it as well. Hefty damage onto Contractz, even throwing the ball down from IMT, but it's CLG granting themselves the objective, but losing their jungler afterwards. I think they're okay with that.
Absolutely, that's a big trade for them. That pushes back the Soul so much. Luger, though.
Palafox
nice
stopping downside. PowerOfEvil gets rooted up, but it doesn't matter. The blast damage too good, so enemy min later out of it. Xerxe throwing around, wants to take down Jenkins. Can he get it? Luger on the outskirts, dishing out the damage as Jhin as much as possible. But here it is, Poome on the opposite side to try and help him if needed, but looks like everyone's just gonna back off.
Yeah, but the end of that play was really good for Immortals, because while they're getting those kills in that fight on that bottom side, Turtle actually pushed in mid, takes down the tower there. 2 more kills as well go the way of PowerOfEvil, and he gets the push in the way of bot. So they got a lot off of that. CLG really happy to actually be able to take this dragon and delay the Soul, but not able to get a clean exit on the fight. After they get this smite down to about, what is 20 HP or something, you take it by an auto, 940, goes to 24, and then the smite comes through. So it was just a split second too early there from Xerxe. Contractz reactive smite when it's down to 24 HP. Revenge, nice E over the wall. RE, second activation there, comes through, kills off Contractz, and they're just trying to get out. But Luger really takes a very risky path. He wants to go back towards mid to defend that, but you do not control your own jungle there. So Luger getting punished, and on the other side, PowerOfEvil winning out in the 1v1 against Palafox, and now Poome is caught out in a weird spot. He's gonna have to blow his summoners to try to get out. They lose multiple kills, and a lot of that was kind of caused by just some risky pathing, so Immortals get a ton of gold really off of that play.
And Gale Force had already been used in the past, so Luger didn't have that additional escape that a lot of these more immobile ADCs tend to rely on. Whereas if you're looking at the opposite side for the marksman, WildTurtle feeling pretty good, 400 bounty on his name. Xerxe starting to get pursued, throws it back onto Contractz, and the curtain is called once more. Destiny almost out of the range of it and does get blocked off. Contractz now the subject of the ace in the hole, brings him to a very dangerous place, but the target is on Poome, centered in the fight here. And Jenkins alongside Luger, they're actually separated from Contractz and Palafox, retreating over towards that top side. So no continuation from that.
Yeah, rough for CLG, just not quite enough damage to actually get that final bit they needed onto Destiny. Contractz couldn't hit that last activation of the arc. Destiny snuck out. Turtle arrives at the ace in the hole, pushing him out, and Poome had already blown his flash on that bottom side, so he's easy pickings. They get another kill there. And Immortals just continuing the pressure here, taking down the top tier 1 right before that. They were 500 gold or so down just before that previous dragon. At worst, they were down about 2K. They're now 3,000 gold ahead here. And CLG are just struggling to find success in these plays. They don't really have any pressure through sides. You know, they have Ryze GP, who can play towards side, but they haven't been able to control vision. You can see on the map, like, where is their forward vision? They've got nothing even up to the river. This entire line is all Immortals. As far as it goes, is about this pink ward. That's as deep as they've gotten their vision, so no ability to actually play out on the map, even though that's kind of what their composition here wants to do. So it's going to be tough. Into another pause, unfortunately, here. As we saw, pings were kind of over there on towards the Baron. They saw Jenkins down bot, and there's pings on Jenkins, and then everyone from Immortals is just charging towards the Baron. They knew that Kench was down on bot side because I think they saw him place the pink, and Jenkins showed on a ward to actually clear that out. So they know there's multiple members from CLG down on the bot side, and the question will be, does Immortals have the burst to just try to actually straight up finish this? Because with what we know, CLG are not close at all to actually responding. They have 0 players on that top side of the map. Everyone is down towards that bottom side. We can see Contractz was actually invading the enemy blue. Luger is basically in mid lane by his base. GP's down bot. So it'll be tough for them to actually respond to this if Immortals want to just fully commit.
And the word on this particular pause is similar to the first one, another investigation of lag on the player's screen. So we'll see what they end up concluding from there. And yeah, in a lot of those skirmishes that we just witnessed, it looks like there is difficulty for CLG to be able to close down on the final bits of those health bars. You know, you see Curtain Call coming through, get some good chunks, a good barrel here. But yeah, you can't quite connect that last bit of the needlework. You can't quite get that last bullet onto Destiny as he exits. And all of those instances making it a bit difficult and putting Destiny to sleep, I guess.
Well, that's what happens when you play Karma. It's the natural result there, you know?
Yeah.
Play too much Karma, you start falling asleep. It's got to get him back on some Leona, maybe a Pike, wake him up a little bit.
Yeah,
Coaches
especially
are just
later
doing
in the
it to him.
game, you're like, I'm a Karma. I pretty much have all my cards issued for me early on.
Yep. Maybe that's just how he's playing the game. You know, you just press RE, eyes closed, no problem.
Yep. I got you, team. I got you shielded.
There you go. Exactly. His job here is done. But I think really a lot of this game in the last kind of 10 minutes of the game has just come down to the fact that CLG has been struggling to get any sort of vision set up. They haven't really been able to get any map control. Even though they are the ones building for 1-3-1, it's actually Immortals who have been pushing inside, taking more towers. They've just done a better job actually setting up the push, warding out their opponents, and capitalizing on their positioning. So, you know, credit to Immortals for playing out the map very well. And it's kind of similar even to the game that they lost last week against TSM, where they actually played 25 minutes of excellent macro. They were playing really, really well when TSM was actually playing that Lulu top against them. They did end up losing that game, but they demonstrated some really strong macro fundamentals, how they were playing through sides, the push and pull, their timing on when they're crashing these waves at the same time was really, really nice. And I think they're kind of demonstrating some of that again here against CLG. And CLG has kind of just struggled to really deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, in that game in particular, Revenge on the Camille, it's a pick that we've seen from him in a lot of top laners, yes, but felt so comfortable in serving the role he needed to for the team on that particular pick. And you're looking for him to do a similar strategy with the Akali here as well. While, you know, and in their team fights, just being able to group up effectively. You've got PowerOfEvil on the trusted Orianna, and locking down CLG, difficult for them to make plays, especially when there's been no aggressive warding. It feels like they're fighting so much just for that vision on their own side of the map. How do you ever get in a position to make those proactive plays when you can't surpass that line of scrimmage?
Yeah, it becomes difficult, right? You have to get push, you have to make them respond to the wave, then be able to get that response. But Immortals, as we said, starting up the Baron, they saw that GP was down towards bot. They knew he did not have his teleport. It is not going down fast enough to actually fully commit to the finish. So I think they're going to be looking for a turn, but they haven't pulled off it just yet.
CLG moving on up towards the Baron. Contractz on the outskirts of the pit. There is a singular route onto WildTurtle right now. He uses the net to get some more distance between them, but Revenge, he's going in for it a bit. Xerxe with the follow-up as well, gets so chunked down by these barrels. They are starting to hit hard.
Yeah, absolutely. That's back-to-back barrels that Jenkins actually hit onto Xerxe, and that pretty much means you cannot fight off of that. So Jenkins, nicely played. GP ulti, pushes them out of the pit, hits back-to-back barrels onto the enemy jungler, gets a push in mid there, chunk that down as well. So we are seeing the power of all this gold that is in the pockets of the GP. He's not going a crit build, so it's not going to be the full-on barrel one-shots, but he is very, very strong, very rich still, despite the fact that they haven't been able to get as much done. You want to play through these strong lanes. You know, send GP down to the ward's bot side, have Contractz shadow him, push out this wave, see if you can get yourselves into a 2v2 with two of these players that are up in gold. Because if you can get GP and Gwen fighting up against the Akali and the Jhin, that's a fight that you likely should win. And they need to look for these sorts of plays to really unlock themselves on the map. Because if you can get a pick inside as CLG, then all of a sudden Immortals is the one that has to kind of abandon their game plan. They have to split up. They have to take these fights that they don't necessarily want, where currently it's Immortals that are really dictating the pace of the game. They're deciding when and where the fights are because they're the ones that have been stacking the objectives. They show up to the objective, they say, all right, gotta come fight us, and CLG has to respond.
And the way that Immortals have been grouping together to keep their squishiest members as safe as possible, that is a great target to be able to line up some barrels for that big old pop, to really target multiple with that needle work from Contractz. So benefiting from maybe some of those more enclosed skirmishes, as GPs tend to like to do when it comes to meeting up with some enemies in the jungle and beyond.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you can hit those big barrels, you can look to a team fight. But I do also think, you know, playing through sides can be really, really effective. PowerOfEvil is becoming a real problem, I think, you know, in this 5v5. He is very farmed. He has a lot of items. He went crown, so he went a relatively defensive build. He kind of has his own splash here with the Conqueror, not something that most Orianna players would go. But it is a rune that he really places a lot of value on a lot of different champions. And you know, it's been pretty effective for him. So he's going to be tough to burst down, but went, you know, relatively high CDR build here with Crown, finished the early Seraphs, has 12 stacks on the Magi's, and now building towards Death Cap. When he hits Death Cap, that's where the Shockwave is going to be so threatening, because he will be around that level 16 mark by the time he completes it. He's almost 15 now, so they're going to have to watch out for him.
So as far as this pause, they are continuing to investigate those reports of lag. So we're going to send things on over to the State Farm Analyst Desk.
Thank you very much, LeTigress. Unfortunate reports of lag. Apologies to all you fans at home who definitely want to be watching some League of Legends just like we do, and to the players themselves who are having to deal with it. Hopefully it gets resolved soon, and we'll let you know as soon as it does. Mark, you got some stuff you want to talk about.
Let's talk about the first thing on the agenda.
All right.
Which is?
In combat Orianna is what I'm dubbing it.
I thought it was going to be Raz's footwear, but okay, we'll go with...
I don't know what PoE has dubbed this build, but you take Conqueror, you go Crown of the Shattered Queen, so you have a little bit of damage reduction, so you can stand in there hucking your little sprockets at people or whatever she throws.
Cogs, I guess.
Cogs, yeah. You throw your little metallic items at them, and then you proc your Conquerors, and it's really nuts. Except, I don't really think this is how Orianna functions in team games, in professional play. A lot of times about ball positioning, putting it down, waiting for the right moment to strike, kind of just shielding your allies in the meantime and stuff. And so I was watching some of the team fights very closely, looking for when it procced.
Usually right as the team fight's ending.
Usually not at all, or when it's ending. So I haven't been that impressed so far. I feel like PoE is always looking for a way to make in-combat Orianna work with Nashor's Tooth and stuff. I'm just not sold on this one.
I was going to say, that's at least the thing, Emily, is like puts
No.
really serious thought in what he does.
So that's what I was gonna say is I can't wait for him to respond to you on Twitter. With,
I'm sure he will explain the math.
So here's the thing I actually really genuinely love about PoE is that he does put a lot of thought into these kind of things. So even if I like personally disagree with something, I always appreciate hearing his side and like why he's choosing to build this way. Because I know for a fact that he's definitely workshopped it. And I want him to tweet at you after this to see what happens.
I know, and it's one of those things too where like even if the math works out, you can debate how the game actually plays. Like this is not a great Crown of the Shattered Queen game, I would argue, because there's not a ton of burst damage you're trying to instantly live through.
I was gonna say also let's not even go to the math yet, which I accept we could go to, right? And maybe there is some numbers that say, ooh, okay, you somehow come out ahead. To your point about just play pattern, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me because I don't. In so many cases, my understanding of Orianna is, like you say, looking for that singular impactful moment within a team fight, but then otherwise playing more for utility of your own team rather than dishing out damage in long, extended battles.
I can understand the idea about these fights being long and extended if you're going up against the Ryze. You don't know what build he's going for, and the Tahm Kench especially, since a lot of how IMT wants to play these fights is waiting Tahm Kench ulti out if they're trying to assassinate a Jhin or something like that. So I can understand that. The game, the fights themselves, how they're actually playing out, it's not going to help. So so that's definitely been the case. I will say, just as an overarching statement about IMT's team fighting, I've gotten much, much better than the earlier weeks. There was a literal time where the Akali was able to just instantly just assassinate the jungler. This was during the dragon fight that we can already call out. So like there are good points of IMT's fighting that I think is only getting better.
I think Revenge being set behind so hard in the early game when Jenkins was just smurfing the lane phase, and then to be able to find pickoffs in team fights, navigate that well from behind on an assassin, that's a really hard thing to do. So Revenge definitely deserves some credit despite the early game not going in his favor.
Yeah.
Well, what about the side of CLG then? Because as you talk about it not going super well for Immortals, those were a couple very early kills handed over to Contractz in the jungle, and usually that's a position, Emily, that we would look towards him to start to catalyze a snowball and carry.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to go over where CLG lost their gold lead because we looked at it several times during investigating the Ryze bug. But early on, I did think that CLG once again had a pretty good game plan around Palafox on the Ryze, hooking up with Contractz. One of the reasons outside of the actual laning matchup that I called out, like they might want to help Akali up there because otherwise she's going to get like shoved in, is that they then lost all topside pressure because Xerxe died off of that play and Contractz got a double kill. So that also led to Jenkins having just this massive lead on the GP, which was also really good. So yeah, I mean, I did like some of the early things that CLG were doing.
I think CLG suffers from this consistency problem where it feels like, even in game from moment to moment you have that, but like between games, it feels like when one player starts doing well, someone else in the team seems to drop the ball a little bit. So Contractz have been under a lot of scrutiny recently. He's having a great game for the majority of it. Jenkins, another person who had gotten some scrutiny, having a great game. And Palafox, who was their stud for the longest time, is suddenly the one underperforming. And that's why it's so sad to watch them, because you see these moments where each player individually looks so good, but they almost never put the entire package together.
100%. Like we already saw that one solo kill that happened through mid lane, so credit to PowerOfEvil on that one.
Yeah.
And then even though the pause started for the top lane Ryze ulti, right? Hey, even though he didn't send himself in, like his two teammates were still going to die.
They were going to die.
It's just the decision making in some of these fights that is really like causing them to falter here. And so yes, they still have a lot of damage options. If they are ever to come back in a fight, it's simply because like, they either got to pick with Ryze, Rune Prison plus Jhin, or, GP would have scaled up if the game's gone long enough. But right now, IMT's doing a lot of good work.
I was going to say, I think also, I started this point before, but Immortals does have a decent draft into some of what CLG has taken. The GP counter pick into Akali feels really good in lane, but then you've taken that into Karma, and then the Ori came in after, but that's a lot of shielding and mobility, where if you just want to drop your ult to start a fight or get some chunk out, like they can get out of these AoEs very quickly and easily, and I think the lack of CC that kind of exists on Immortals comp makes it difficult.
All right, well, once again, we are back into game, so I'm going to try this one final time. LeTigress, Azael, take it away.
Yes, we are back. Baron getting started up once more, 23 minutes. When you got the pauses, it's like we're in Inception. Every minute
Hour
is
3
equal
of
to...
the 22-minute game.
Let's go. Just more League of Legends action for everybody here. But yeah, so now a little opportunity for both their teams to reset as well.
Yep. Always reminds me of this Hunter x Hunter arc.
Yeah.
Where it's like the entire episode happens and they're like 8 seconds have passed.
I always think that with a lot of, you know, DBZ classic days. He's gonna be ready in 3
They're
minutes.
charging up.
This is a 3-part episodic storyline.
Yeah. The smoke's still clearing 4 weeks later. All right, well, Immortals going to be able to grab another dragon here uncontested. So they move to Soul Point. They're almost done their charging up here. It's been a very action-packed game. It just doesn't feel that way because of all the pauses, unfortunately. I mean, this is a 21-kill game. And it was that many kills at 22 minutes. Revenge now here on the run. CLG trying to push up the sides. They need to clear out some of this vision, try to establish some wards so they can utilize this GP and Ryze, who are very strong, to create some pressure on the map, because really the way that they have got to buy time is through these picks on the side lane. Palafox does spot them coming for him and will be able to back it up. Doesn't know exactly if they're committing to him, so we'll have to spend the Realm Warp, unfortunately.
Revenge answering to the push-up of that wave over on the bot side does have Unleashed Teleport to help him anytime he needs to rejoin the rest of the team. Currently down for PowerOfEvil, but both TPs up for Jenkins and Palafox as well. In terms of setting how things can be going in the near future.
Yep, I mean, I think for Immortals, they just want to play towards Soul now, continue grouping for these fights. They've been doing really well in the 5v5. And CLG, it's up to them to try to make something happen through side. Jenkins has been strong in these 1v1s. He will still win that 1v1. He's very far ahead as far as the gold is concerned. Ma is super efficient now. And ever since they added the lifeline passive back to it, and all the CDR on it, it's really, really strong. And the fact that the shield actually scales with AD, so very difficult for Revenge to ever win in that 1v1, but hasn't been able to push further to actually get much done. Immortals, though, trap line set up. They are on to Baron, trying to force GP to answer.
Curtain call for the intel right now to see how committed Immortals are to this objective, because that vision that was previously acquired by CLG was taken out, and they don't want to overcommit for something that they don't necessarily have to answer. Instead, keeping them off of it for as long as they can.
Yep, just going to be able to kind of force them off pretty easily. Didn't get anything from GP. I think that was really the goal, was they were trying to at least get GP to blow his ultimate or to drop his TP. But right back onto it. Once again, they still have the trap line. PowerOfEvil and Destiny are looking for the turn here.
Oh, and they find it a nice lockdown onto Poome. He's going to be taken out of this fight as soon as he enters it. So Immortals, without the protection of that Tahm Kench, they feel much more empowered to commit onto this Baron now. The cannon barrage comes down to peel them off a tad. Contractz already seen over towards that top wave to clear it. Revenge
right
pushing away Luger and Palafox, and with CLG no longer in the vicinity, they can go for it.
Yeah, Revenge actually TP'd first here. Jenkins is walking up. There's no GP ulti, but they are getting low here. CLG can definitely fight this.
Oh, Revenge isolated. Luger going for the shots as well, but Xerxe, he is low. Contractz throwing out the needlework, goes into stasis. Xerxe, even with the pressing guard around him, has to back off of the fight. They managed to take out the enemy jungler. Contractz, his contract ended right now. Revenge, can he get the kill onto Luger? Immediately answered by Jenkins because he was already bot low. PowerOfEvil in pursuit, ace in the hole, brings Jenkins down to about 300 HP, and Poome has respawned, which means he can come through for that additional level of protection.
Man, Contractz just went way too early on that one. He needed to wait for the rest of his team to actually make that collapse happen. He goes in very, very quick. Now the flash on the wall.
Flash for the wall, the root, the knock-up. It's good. WildTurtle bringing the Gale Force back to it, popping that catfish again. And now CLG 3 eliminated. It was just Revenge that's still down for IMT, but they feel good with the 4 members they have. They can stick onto this Baron and commit to it. Jenkins seeing what kind of intel he can grab if he wants to make any step up, because Palafox is here as well. Realm Warp activated for a moment, but no, continued pursuit from IMT onto this objective. CLG tries to offset it a bit, but it is secured. IMT grab the Baron. Can they turn it around? A tether attempted onto Palafox, but on the opposite side, they lose Gangplank. Jenkins eliminated. CLG out of this objective.
CLG just going in a couple members at a time, back to back to back there, and Immortals punishing them with the turns. First, it's Contractz going in very, very early, and because he's forced out on that stopwatch, stopwatch does not save you against Caitlyn unless the rest of your team is going to push that Caitlyn back, because the trap will be there. You're always going to go down right after it. then Palafox and Poome trying to make this super aggressive play on the turtle, but they didn't have the vision to realize everyone else was around him, so they end up getting punished for it. Immortals have the Baron recall, they get the reset. Pewee has his teleport, so they're going to look to try to grab Soul here as well. Could they be caught out again?
Poome and Luger moving as a unit, use a blast cone to get over. Luger flashing away, and under the protection of his turret is not enough. Devoured by Poome, who can keep him for a little bit of time. Revenge is taking up most of these turret shots, which ends up being his downfall. Contractz, though, also answered. Once again, Tahm, Kench taken out of it. So Immortals coming out on top with the Baron that they have, with the buff feeling good, taking down turret number 2, and bringing their power across the map.
They're just going to keep on pushing here. Multiple members dead. It's up to GP now, and Jenkins can be caught.
Xerxe, he's got his eyes on the prize. Jenkins brought down to 50% of HP. There's not much he can do against this onslaught. Luger, also squishy. Palafox, now on the retreat. And on the side of Immortals, they've just got their eyes on the objectives. They took down that bot inhib. They can take down this mid turret and keep their eyes on the second inhibitor as well. So much clearing duty that CLG have to be wary of right now.
Absolutely, and they just pull back. They're going to grab Soul here. Xerxe's already over, starting it up as the rest of his team collects that second inhibitor. Immortals so far ahead now. It's going to be 7.5k gold here, plus the Soul. You're looking at nearly 10k in stats. When all of that is added on, Immortals are in full control and still have 50 seconds with the Baron, so conceivably could get some of these waves pushed out and maybe even threaten that tier 2 top.
Nice and flush buffs galore for Immortals. They really managed to snowball off of a couple of these past plays where even CLG's hesitancy in that contest earlier really has cascaded into some lost fights again and again.
Definitely been a problem for them. CLG just hasn't been able to find the right setups, hasn't been able to get the vision. Immortals have been the ones dictating the pace of the game largely. CLG did a great job early punishing Revenge, but it just hasn't mattered that he's been behind because PowerOfEvil and Turtle are more than equal to the test. You can see Pewee now 25 Magi stacks. He is enormous. The waves are coming in mid, stacking up, bot stacking up. GP showed bot, so they're just gonna go walk up to the tower, take their third and hit for free.
Ooh, the aggressive push forward from Xerxe is followed up nicely, and Poome again taken out, and Contractz even throwing out his ultimate. That stasis will only buy him a little bit of time, hoping that Luger can land some of the curtain call in the process, but none of it will chunk down IMT in the way that they need to. Revenge keeping his eyes over on Palafox, zoning him off completely, whereas IMT want to pressure Jenkins off of this as well. All of the inhibitors down. They can go for the push right now. 4 taken down. Luger only one standing. A fountain can drown you in all of the protection that you desire, but it is not a shield against the power that Immortals have. Pulling together a victory and making a statement against CLG.
Immortals absolutely stomping CLG here today. 31-minute win. They have 26 kills in 31 minutes. One of the bloodiest games we have seen this split. PoE and Turtle, monster performances there. Destiny as well, deathless in the win. It's a good look for Immortals, who do seem to be getting better and better week over week. They had back-to-back 1-1 weeks, almost went 2-0 last week, and they're starting off this next week on a really, really high note. We'll see how many wins they can string together because they do have a tough schedule down the last 2 back-end games.
Ever so important when it comes to Super Week. I kind of want to watch that game back and skip over all the pauses just to see how fast-paced it was, because it wasn't always Immortals going for the play. Both sides were trying to be proactive. Yeah,
totally. I mean, CLG, I think, was very proactive in the early stages. They just struggled to kind of push the game forward past that. Their bot lane got absolutely blown out, by these plays that were on the bottom side, but it was kind of a cross-map play where they got Jenkins and Contractz monstrously ahead. Contractz started this game 2-0 very, very early off of this skirmish around mid lane, and then they used that pressure that him and Palafox had to actually put Revenge in the dumpster. Revenge couldn't do anything for the first 10 minutes of this game. He's constantly getting zoned off waves, and we saw Jenkins collecting so much plate gold, but they just weren't really able to do anything with it. And, they weren't able to push the game forward through side lanes. They never established vision. They were never able to actually get pressure through sides to draw members from Immortals to that. So Immortals would just show up 5 members strong to every objective and kind of force CLG to walk in blind, which just wasn't working out.
It's one of the strengths that Immortals was banking on, being able to work as that 5-player unit into the comp that CLG brought. And I like what we were seeing from kind of the jungle matchup early on.
Yeah.
It felt like they were both very responsive to one another. Oh, Xerxe is down there. I'm going to try and make this play top and keep Revenge pressured. Or the opposite true as well. I see Contractz making that play. Let's go for this Drake down bot where our strength lies. But that mid game and when there weren't any more additional openings for CLG to take advantage of, maybe losing a little of that momentum as well, that's where it seemed to disintegrate a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you saw by the end of the game, Revenge basically solo killed Palafox. It's like, you know, he became more of a threat. You know, even in some of the earlier fights, he was able to trade out his life for at least a lot of damage or do something. He found ways to get value, even though he was very, very far behind.
Well, I'm sure Immortals are feeling pretty good after that one. A victory indeed. We are going to meet up with Pastrytime and WildTurtle for our Verizon post-game interview.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm standing right here with WildTurtle. What a grueling first game to open up your Super Week. What was it like navigating such a unintentionally long game?
It was pretty hard, honestly. I think I was like super focused, but then every time we paused, it was just like, oh, I got to refocus every time. So it was kind of, I'm sorry to the audience too, but it was still a good game, I guess.
Yeah, it happens, right? And is there someone in the team like kind of keeping everyone like focused, or is like everyone kind of individually responsible for keeping them?
I think everyone's just
focused?
individually responsible to stay focused during the games. I know sometimes it doesn't happen, but I think, yeah, we were just kind of chilling during the pauses.
And individually, obviously, a very good game for you, getting Caitlyn, not dying, getting 10 kills. How did the game feel kind of once it got going again?
It felt pretty good, honestly. Like throughout the entire game, I think we were pretty comfortable. I think they didn't really have that much CC, so it was like really easy to play the Caitlyn Karma. So.
And then, of course, it's the start of hopefully a very successful weekend for Immortals. Teams had some mixed results, but I feel like is obviously getting better. How do you feel like the team's been doing with the first few weeks together?
I think we're finally finding out like our playstyle and getting to know each other a little bit better and like how we want to play the game. So I think everything's coming together for IMT now. And
then how do you think it's going to go then to unfold throughout the rest of the weekend?
I hope it's a 3-0 weekend. So.
All right, well, best of luck, of course. Thank you so much for joining me, Turtle. We are going to go away, but Vulcan seriously hurt his foot playing soccer, of all things. Someone tell the man not to get off the rift. And he's going to be trying to see if he can kick off well against her opponents today, as Evil Geniuses will be taking on FlyQuest.
Tristan, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or
you want to mute everyone, or?
Wait, he didn't want me lower.
Yeah, he didn't want you lower, man.
Hey, it's a gap. It's a gap.
Now PowerOfEvil maybe gonna get wrapped on, but could get the soul.
Another shockwave. They lose another.
Oh, no.
2 more standing. Luger, you are in a barrel right now. Shots taken by Immortals.
Tristan smurfing on them. Tristan smurfing here. Tristan smurfing.
Has flashing coming to GP as well.
Yeah, let's go on GP, go on GP, go on GP, go on GP.
Shield him on, shield him on.
It's over for them, guys. I'm going top here.
Now flash
Roll
on the wall.
back for the wall, the roof, the knock-up. It's good. WildTurtle bringing the Gale Force back to it, popping that catfish again.
What is going on?
I can't afford streaming anymore, so.
Sure you can. State Farm has rates that fit your budget.
Oh, good. Because some true crime would be nice.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or click to get a quote today.